Hi guys, so welcome to the first video of building out chat PDF. In this video we are going to be starting a new SvelteKit project and we are going to be setting up Shadcn-Svelte. So let's get started. I'm on the home page of SvelteKit and in here we have instructions on how to start a new SvelteKit project. So let's just do that. In the terminal we can copy this and add that over here. So this command uses npm, but I prefer using pnpm because it is much faster than npm. So I also prefer you guys also use pnpm instead. We're going to name this chat pdf yt, and this is going to start a new project. But before it does that, it needs to ask us, simple questions. So we are doing a SvelteKit demo app. We are using TypeScript. We want ESLint for linting and we want Prettier for code formatting. We don't want any testing, so we are going to ignore playwright and wtest. And we don't also want to use Svelte 5 yet because it is, well, unstable. Now this has initialized a new project for us. So we are going to cd into this project. We are going to run pnpm install to install all the dependencies. And we are going to skip the third step for now. And instead we are just going to do pnpm dev directly. Now let's open localhost 5173. And this is the welcome page of our brand new SvelteKit project. It has a basic increment and decrement counter. It has several pages, but we don't want to, kind of use this. So we are going to get rid of this. Let's just close the server for now and open this in VS Code. I like to use cursor, so I'm going to do cursor dot, but if you're using VS Code, you can do a code dot instead. So here's what our project looks like. We have a bunch of configuration files and you can take a look. We have Prettier and we have ESLint for formatting and linting. We have tsconfig for TypeScript. We have a Svelte config file. And under the SRC, we have all the source code. Source code is divided between lib and routes, basically. Routes contain all the pages to our application, and lib contains all utilities or, different, our components are going to reside over here, our database configuration, etc., etc. Right now, there's a lot of boilerplate code. All this boilerplate code is used to basically power this web page, but we don't want that, so we are going to get rid of everything. In our app.css, we have a bunch of styles. We don't need any of these styles, so we're just going to get rid of them. In lib, we have a bunch of static images. We don't want them. So we are just left with the entry point of our application, which is the app.html. Just to make sure things are working correctly, we are going to create a page.svelte inside our routes and render an h1 tag. We'll see that change. Let me zoom this a little bit. Now let me start the server. And now we can see the hello world inside of our application. Now this looks ugly. So I think the next best step is to use Shadcn-Svelte and TailwindCSS. So let's head over to Shadcn-Svelte and look at its installation guide. Shadcn-Svelte is a community built duplicate of the original Shadcn, which is intended for React frameworks such as Remix, Next.js, and Vanilla React. So we are going to be looking at the SvelteKit guide to add this and Tailwind into our project. This uses Svelte add to add Tailwind CSS files to our project. So we are going to open a new instance of our terminal and we are going to run this. Don't want the typography plugin. So this is going to add all the dependencies and it's going to add different files such as the Tailwind config file, the post css.js file, and we're going to take a look at these files right now. So this is the boilerplate Tailwind CSS configuration file. This is needed by Tailwind CSS, and we have made changes to the app.css file, which now uses import statements to load, the baseline CSS that Tailwind CSS uses under the hood. It also adds a layout.svelte file, which loads in the app.css into our application. The next step is to add Shadcn-Svelte, so let's do that. For that, we need an alias to point to the lib folder that we just created. This is important so that we can import components from lib, which are going to come under the lib once we have successfully installed Shadcn-Svelte. So let's do that. I've copied the code and we just need it to the Svelte config file. We need this to point to the lib folder, which comes under src lib and a wildcard. The next step is to use the Shadcn-Svelte CLI to initialize Shadcn into this. This is going to ask multiple questions. I'm going to use New York, but it doesn't matter what you want to use. We can use Slate, doesn't matter. Our global CSS file is located under src, so I think this default value is correct. And we have the Tailwind configuration in the root, so this is also correct. We are going to place all of our components under the lib folder, so this is correct. And any utilities related to Shadcn-Svelte are going to be placed in libutils, which makes sense. Awesome. Now this creates a bunch of things. The first thing is components.json, which is the configuration for Shadcn-Svelte. This is telling it to use TypeScript. It's telling it where the CSS file is located and where the Tailwind configuration is located. It also adds aliases to the two folders, components and utils. So we can see that both of these are created under the lib folder. So the utils files contains any source code that is related to Shadcn-Svelte. That contains a bunch of animations and a class merging utility. And under the components directory, we're going to have all of our UI components. We don't have any. We're going to add those, but first let's take a look at the app.css. The app.css adds a bunch of variables that Shadcn-Svelte uses, and all of these variables are then consumed by the Tailwind config to define the colors. Now Shadcn-Svelte by default uses HSL variables, but this is something that we're not going to be touching very much. Now that we have successfully set up Shadcn-Svelte, I think it makes sense to add a component. So let's add, let's say, the button component. So this is the CLI command to add the button component. I'm going to copy it for pnpm, which is the package manager I use. Now this is the command to add the button component. What I like to do is I like to add a package.json script, because this is something we use occasionally whenever we want a new component from Shadcn. And what I'll do is head over to package.json and define a script called add component. This will contain the first part of the script, and now we can use this in our terminal. Oh, it seems that I hadn't saved the package.json. So now let's hit this. It prompts us to add all the dependencies required by the button component. I think Shadcn-Svelte uses bits UI under the hood. So let's see. Now under the lib, under components, we have a UI folder which contains the button component for us. All of this code is actually brought from Shadcn-Svelte, and this is something we don't really need to modify a lot. Let's render this button in our page. We have imported this from components, and let's see if we can see this component now being rendered. Hitting refresh, you can see that we have the button over here, and you'll also see that the h1 tag has no styles applied to it right now. And the reason is that these Tailwind declarations are basically resetting most of the styles that browser by default applies. Now that we have added Shadcn-Svelte, I think we're in a good position to actually commit this into our GitHub repository. So I'm going to head over to GitHub. Now we are going to give this a name. Could be anything. We are going to keep this private. You can keep it public. That is your choice, but just do not initialize this repository with anything and just hit create. If you have done everything right, you're going to see something like this. This is an empty repository, and for us to push existing code to it, we can use these commands. So we can copy all of this code paste it over here. And instead of just adding the README, we can add everything. You can change the commit message if you want to. I like to add prefix for actions like feat, fix, or chore, but that is up to you. So what this is doing is it is initializing a Git repository locally, and then it is staging all files within this local repository. It is creating a commit with this message, and now it's changing its main branch to be named main. This command is linking the local Git repository with the remote one that we just created, and the final one is pushing it to the remote origin. If everything works well, when you refresh the GitHub page, you're going to see all of your code being pushed to the GitHub repository. So in this video, we initialized a SvelteKit project using TypeScript. Then we added TailwindCSS and Shadcn-Svelte, and we added a button component just for making sure that everything was working fine. In the next video, we are going to add Supabase, and we are also going to configure authentication using Supabase. So we'll create a new Supabase project, set up authentication using GitHub Auth, and then we are also going to have a login card similar to what you saw in the first video of this playlist. And we are going to have the whole Auth flow implemented using Supabase and GitHub Auth. So if you're excited about implementing this and following along, hit a like and subscribe to my channel. See you soon.